Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Jackson, licensed professional counselor, and welcome to my channel. Today we are reviewing The Woman King. You don't know how long I've been waiting to do this review. I saw this movie a few weeks ago and I got so much insight, I had to see it again. I said, I have to talk about what I saw, the themes in the movie. I was not expecting for this movie to give me all of this. I am a licensed professional counselor, also an internal family systems therapist. And so I utilize my lens of internal family systems. If you don't know much about internal family systems, please, I have many videos on my channel kind of going in detail about what internal family systems is. Get curious, learn as we all are learning and growing. It's one of the reasons why I have this channel, so feel free to dip into your curiosity, lean on in, and to learn about internal family systems. This video, we will be talking about the different themes that were happening in this movie, and also touching on the generational trauma. Generational trauma was very, very present throughout the film, and it was one of the things that inspired me to do this video. So let's get into it. So this movie takes place in West Africa in 1823, and this movie is a fictional depiction based off of the Dahomey tribe, which is a tribe based off of majority women soldiers, and they were notorious. And so this film, it takes a different approach. It takes a slant. It is not historically accurate, right? There are a lot of videos out there about that. It is not that. It is a fictional story. And the major themes in this movie is, of course, generational trauma. It's number one. It is seen so prevalent throughout the movie. And Naniska's character does a wonderful job with really outlining the generational trauma that she experienced. Now, this movie has been out for quite some time. So, just in case you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, because I will be going into great detail about the characters, about the movie, okay? So, some of the major themes that we're going to focus on in this video: generational trauma, survival and protection, very big pieces, and vulnerability, huge pieces of the movie, and acknowledgement, being seen and fighting to be seen. That was also something that was very, very prevalent throughout the movie. So the first theme that we're going to focus on is being seen and acknowledged. Now, in internal family systems, we know that all of our parts want and need to be seen and acknowledged. And it was ever so present during this film. What we saw is how black women were seen through this movie, how they were acknowledged was through their beauty or through their strength. Through their beauty or through their strength. We saw this with the king's wives. They were always adorned in beautiful garb, and their jewelry, their accessories, they were acknowledged for their beauty. And the Dahomey women, they were acknowledged for their strength. And boy, oh boy, isn't that how we even see parallels in our world today? How women, right? We have this trope, this strong black woman. That's something that we're honored for, right? We're honored for our strength, even though we know that there's some shadow sides to that strength. That because people see us as strong, that they don't see our pain. And same for the internalized strength, that we don't even see each other's pain. And Naniska, when she met Nawi, what she assumed? She assumed that her father was rich. She assumed that she had an easy life. And she didn't see Nawi's pain. She was coming there because her family gave her away. Because she refused to be married to this man, this older man, who was abusive, who was going to be abusive to her. So the way that Nawi fought to be seen was to really fight to be the best soldier that she could be. And Izoji, she said to her, hey, you need to stop making such a ruckus. You need to stop interrupting when Aniska's trying to teach you, or you're fighting against her. And she said, well, if I'm quiet, she won't see me. There's this part of her that wanted to be acknowledged, wanted to feel like she mattered. Her family discarded her. She was dropped off at an orphanage. She knew that. So her birth mother discarded her, or birth family discarded her. She felt like she didn't have value. And so the way that she fought for her value was to fight to be the best. Fight to be the best. And we saw this even when they did their training, their final training exercise, and they're going through those thorns, and her friend gets caught in the thorns, and she comes back and she goes and she still perseveres, and she gets to the end first. And what does the king say? The king says, my goodness, look at that face. You're so beautiful. If you weren't such a great soldier, I would have you as one of my wives. Her beauty and her strength. That was the only thing he saw. I'm curious if there was really a part of him that saw her outside of her beauty, outside of her strength. I also thought it was ironic that at the beginning of the movie, the soldiers were going down, marching down the village, and the village people were not allowed to look at them. They had to stop and stand, right, to acknowledge them that they were coming down the street or coming down the road, but they could not make eye contact with them. They could not look at them. And I thought there was a lot of irony about that, like acknowledging their presence, but not seeing them. But we know those little people, they had to sneak, they had to lean into their curiosity to look at them, to see their glory, to see their strength. Now, Viola Davis's character is kind of an anomaly. She's definitely seen for her strength. Oh my goodness, her strength. And she's also valued for her intelligence as a soldier. And her place is very coveted. The council members were coveting her relationship with the king. The wives were very upset, especially one of them was very upset that the king favored Naniska over all of them. Listen to her. She bent the king's ear. He listened to her. She had proven her loyalty to him, and she also proved herself to be knowledgeable. The king trusted her. He respected her. He even gave her grace after she disobeyed him. She had to fight, right? She wanted to go back to fight for Nawi, and he said, no, we're not going to do that. And she did instead. She went instead. And he gave her grace. He granted her grace, even though it was going to make him look weak, make him look like a weak king. He gave her grace because at the end of the day, she still honored what she felt was right, but she also honored her commitment to the king. Now, because Viola Davis's character knew how important it was, intelligence and being crafty was, when Nawi did the practical joke of having the sparks that exploded when the heads were cut off on the dummies that they were practicing on, she leaned to her and said, okay, tell me, how did you do this? And she utilized that in a way to help them in battle, because the other soldiers, they had guns, they had horses, and they didn't have that. They had just their strength and their training, and that's why they had to fight so hard. And so using this tool helped them greatly when it came to winning and defeating the other soldiers at the end of the movie. Now, survival and protection, though these are two big things, there was definitely polarizing force, right, between this idea of survival and protection and vulnerability. And it was playing out constantly throughout the movie. And we know we have parts of us that are often working very tirelessly to protect us. And these soldiers knew that they had to protect themselves and fight to survive in battle, as they know they were deemed as weaker, right? You remember the OU general said, you guys, your comrades were defeated by women. And the way he said that, it was to say that, how pathetic that happened, that you allowed that to happen. And so they had to fight hard. They had to fight hard and train hard to protect themselves in multiple ways. In multiple ways. Not just physically, but even emotionally, even mentally. They had to fight to protect themselves. Also, most of these women had very, very tragic stories. That had also a great deal of pain attached to them, as they were vulnerable. And so they found a way of becoming a soldier, to feel more in control and more powerful, to take reins over their life and change the narrative of their story. Izoji's character talked about how her mother tried to sell her virginity to other men. Naui was left at the front gate of the king because her father said she was unruly, because she would not marry an older man who was going to be cruel to her and was going to be physically aggressive towards her. Naniska endured many tragic and traumatic events while being captured by the OU soldiers. And she had to hide her pregnancy, give birth to a baby in a field, right out in a field, and also give the baby away, as she did not want to be viewed as vulnerable. And I'm curious too, if her fight and to become a general, to be the best, was a way also to make sure that she was protecting herself, but then other women from going through what she went through, that wouldn't happen again. She made sure she was the best so that she could protect herself and them. Even the younger soldiers. We had one soldier who both of her parents died and her siblings were sold off into slavery. The other soldier said, I'd rather be a soldier. I stayed here to fight and train because I'd rather be the hunter than be the prey. Right? So this is about survival and about protection of self, because as women and Black women, they were vulnerable. They were very vulnerable. And so they had to. Some of them felt like this was an act of desperation to protect themselves. So we're seeing that it's not that they wanted to feel strong. It's that they had to. You hear that? It's that they had to take on this strength, this protection, because they were so vulnerable. Because if no one else would protect them, they were defenseless against the world. And so they had to take on this strength in order to make sure they survived. Naniska often had this like her the way she carried herself was this just like pillar of strength. When at the beginning of the movie, after they found the captives and they're going back into the king to let him know what happened, like they were able to defeat the people who had these slaves and they freed them, and her friends, her fellow soldiers are like, isn't this great? And she can't even allow herself to rejoice for the victory, because she's thinking about the next battle and what's going to come now that they did free these captives, and what's going to be the retaliation factor of it. Like, I cannot be weak at any moment. I can't even experience joy, because I have to be thinking about the next battle and the next battle after that and the next fight after that. If I rejoice, then I'm going to be caught off guard and potentially horrible things may happen, may be captured again, and I can't allow that to happen. The same tough exterior that she had, she used in training them. She had a very tough love exterior, especially we saw the younger soldiers, and definitely Naui. She had this part of her that would use shame when Naui tried to test her authority, because that could not be questioned, that could not be wavered. Questioning Naniska's authority could be a life or death decision in the midst of battle. So don't do that, because that could be dangerous. If I give you an order, you follow the order. Well, Naui, she had a lot of courage. She had a lot of bravery. And she tested the waters because she was dying to be seen, right? She was dying to be seen. It was desperate for it. There were parts of her that wanted it so badly that she would do it at any cost. And Naniska met her with tough love and shame. Shamed her for asking questions, shamed her and made sure she knew that she didn't know the best way. Instead of embracing Nawi's new ways, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened in that dynamic if Naniska would have embraced Nawi more and taken some of that courage. But Naniska feared what would happen if her authority was questioned in front of the other soldiers. So there had to be this shaming tactic, right, to make sure Nawi knew that she was less than, not equal to, but less than her for her survival, to make sure that she was safe. She even told Nawi when she was crying and tearful in a moment of experiencing sadness, she told her, if you are a warrior or as a warrior, you must kill your tears. Could you imagine cutting off? You have to cut off your emotion. You have to numb it in order to be strong, in order to protect yourself. And that thought is still very prevalent to this day, where we have a part of us that numbs our feelings, a part of us that blocks off our emotions in order to protect us, to endure hard things, to endure painful things. Trauma will do that. It will make you say, I'm just not going to feel anything because that's better. I can tolerate that more. If I continue to feel the sadness of all the things I'm experiencing, that's too much. That's too heavy. And that's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to be safe. What's more safe is for me to numb my feelings so that I can focus on what needs to be done. I can focus on survival. The training was grueling and intense. You saw the relentless training, the pain tolerance training. That's what I call it, where Izoji and this male soldier are head to head. They have the spear in their shoulder, and you see the blood coming from their shoulder, but they are leaning in their body weight, right? Their body weight, and they are building up the tolerance that if they are injured in battle, then it won't make them, again, caught off guard or caught where they'll still be focused and they'll still be fighting. They had to be focused. They had to be ready for survival at all times, and even physical pain. So we're talking outside of emotional pain now, even physical pain we could not be vulnerable to. We could not make space for that. We don't have time for that because we have to survive. We have to survive. Just think about that. And what that does to our bodies, it creates a disconnect from our bodies. Oftentimes our bodies too will tell us what's going on in our mind and what's happening with us emotionally as well, or even physically. We'll have physical pain. Our brains make sure that it sends a signal. Pain is a signal to say, hello, something's wrong. You have a headache. You're having headaches constantly. Something's wrong. You have pain in your knee. Something's wrong. And so it is sending signals to let you know. And they were training themselves to cut that signal off, or to even numb the reaction to that signal, so that they will be able to focus on survival. And none of this is neither good nor bad. When we are in survival mode, when we have parts of us that are taking on things and that we need to do in order to survive everyday life, yes, they may not get the results that they want. They may not be the healthiest, right? But it's what we need to do in order to survive. And sometimes what our brain does instinctively, without even us knowing. We learn things along the way. We have beliefs, and this is how we survive. I am sure that soldiers, where people experience pain, and then because of that pain, they were cut off guard and they were killed. And so, no, we need to do this. We now need to do this training to make sure that we stay focused on the goal. Stay focused on the goal. Put up the blinders. Don't have any space for emotional pain, not even physical pain, but stay focused on survival. Another way that the soldiers survived and protected themselves is that they were not allowed to have any romantic relationships. They weren't allowed to marry, and they were not allowed to have any romantic relationships. Again, blinders. They had to be focused. And there was this belief that love made them weak. And now we came along and she questioned, right? Her curiosity, she questioned this. How come the male soldiers, they get to marry, but we don't? What is that about? She connected with Malik and she had moments with him because there was attraction there was affection there. And at the same time, at the end of the movie, she chose her calling. One, I really feel like now we chose to her connection with her mother, right? Because they had been separated for so long in the majority of her life, and she finally found her. But she knew her training. She knew who she was internally was a soldier. She chose being a warrior, right? Instead of love. But even on the other hand, Nawi, she had a lot of compassion. She went back and she fought for the other soldier, right? She knew had no choice. Her parents were killed. Her siblings were in slavery. And she was going to be out here on her own. She had compassion for her. She went back to make sure that she would be able to complete the training, the final training, so that she would become a soldier. And she also looked out for Naniska. When she changed her mind, she was going to trade some of her soldiers, right, to the OU general, but she knew what would happen if she did that. And so she changed her mind. And who was there to have her back? Nawi. But who got yelled at by Naniska for sticking by her side? Nawi. And that's because Naniska, she could not afford for anything to happen to her or one of her soldiers. I truly believe that Naniska's biggest fear was having one of her soldiers captured and traumatized as she was when she was captured. That was her biggest fear. And so that is why she was so upset with Nawi because of that. And she did not want her authority to be questioned. Also, one of the things between Naniska and Nawi that there was this honor about your scars and the scars that you had in battle. It was a badge of honor. It was the markings of a warrior, right? And a level of protection. You think about scars, it is literally the thickening of skin, right, around a wound. Now we also had a fascination for weapons, right? She had a fascination for weapons, stones, and she was in the brook, like near the water, where she met with Malik. She was looking for stones. They had their moment. He said, "What can I give you?" And she took one of his spears, right? And then she got a gun. She got the other spear or weapon during the final training ceremony. She loved weapons. Why? Because that made her feel safe. It made her feel protected. She wanted to feel protected. And there's a lot of places that I could go there with weapons and feeling protected, but something for all of us, I think, to get curious about. On the other side, ironically, there was a space of vulnerability with each other. They, even though there were parts of them, right, that were maybe blind to their humanity, they still saw each other and shared their stories of pain, their stories of being mistreated. And they formed a sisterhood, a bond, and they called themselves blood sisters. They felt like, as a group, as a family, that they were invincible. They could not be broken because of that. And as each of them fallen in battle, they had ceremonies where they honored them. They would put the doll on top of their body to even acknowledge the bond. And at the end of the movie, the soldier, she is doing an ancestry ceremony to acknowledge those fallen soldiers, to acknowledge them, their bond. They didn't belong in the outside world. Their family discarded them. Their family didn't see their worth, didn't see who they were. But they saw each other and acknowledged their worth. And they created a space of vulnerability. One of the most beautiful scenes in the movie for me is when they are dancing with each other at the end of the movie. Was so beautiful because it's their humanity. They said, here we can be joyful, here we can have joy, we can have joyful moments with each other, even though the outside world doesn't acknowledge us for who we are. We can love each other. It's true sisterhood. The last theme is generational trauma, right? And so we see this very prevalently throughout the movie. There are different types of trauma that are even exposed through the movie. Of course, the underlying theme of the movie is slavery, right? So these soldiers were fighting, and the undercurrent, right, is that the king is involved in the slave trade, and Naniska is trying to convince him, hey, let's get out of this. Let's get out of this slave trade. Let's start here. Here's this oil that we can use, and we can make this our currency and not use our people. Let's not use our people as currency. And some of the byproducts of slavery, of course, is dehumanization. When we make someone a slave, we make them less than, and we view them as less than. And so we see that the dehumanization of Black people and of Black women in this movie is ever so prevalent. Even in the scene, I don't know if you remember the scene, it was very short, where the slaver is in like this hammock-like contraption, and the slaves are holding his body weight on their shoulders. He is chilling as they are struggling and fighting to walk, right? So he views them as less than. There's no way that someone can be your equal and you would allow for that to happen, right? Allow for that to happen and say, you're my equal, but I'm going to allow you to carry me. No, there's a dynamic, a shift of power where I own you. So you do what I say. Well, I sit back. And we see this also with the women, as they were oftentimes in very, very desperate situations where they were open and vulnerable to very traumatic things and very horrible things happening to them. And the product of that was the SA that happened to multiple women throughout the movie. Throughout the movie, many women were taken advantage of in this way. And it was almost a common and an assumed thing that would happen, right, to the women. And it was another reason why they had to be so strong. It was very interesting because the king, this is mentioned very shortly throughout the film, that his mother, the king's mother, was sold into slavery by his brother. Could you imagine that? I had to sit there for a moment in the movie, and I said, what did you just say? The king's mother was sold into slavery by his brother. And he said this with a straight face. You see the product of dehumanization, right? And at the same time, I do believe that was a part of the reason why Naniska was able to convince him, like, hey, let's not do this anymore. Let's not do this to our own people, because of the part of him that definitely had to be carrying some sadness, some hard feelings towards the fact that his own brother sold his mother into slavery. Another interesting character is Malik. Malik is half Dahomey, and he really wanted to see the Dahomey people. And so his friend, his associate, we don't know the nature of their relationship. We know that they're at least close because they were traveling together. He was like, hey, I'll show you the people since your mother was enslaved, so you can meet the people and connect with the people. And because he saw himself and he saw his mother in these women, in these women and in these slaves, he fought. He fought to make sure that they were safe. He fought for Nawi. He bought her and he reassured her that, hey, I'm not trying to buy you to take advantage of you. You have your own free will. I bought you to keep you safe. And also at the end of the movie, when they're on that boat and him and the slaver are there with the other slaves and they're bound up, and he said, nope, I'm going to let you go. And he chose their freedom over his friend because he saw their humanity, like he wanted someone to see his mother's humanity. He did for them what he wanted someone to do for her. That is oftentimes how generational trauma can show up. We have parts of us that are carrying pain, and how they protect us oftentimes is we externalize. We do for others what we would want to have been done to us, right? Or we are what we have wanted or needed, what we needed in the past, right? So there's a part of him that maybe wanted to save his mother, but couldn't do it. So he said, I will make sure that I save Nawi. I will make sure that I save these people from becoming slaves, because I wish I could have done that for my mother. Izoji is definitely probably one of my favorite characters of the movie. I, like Nawi, was so heartbroken when she didn't make it to the end of the film. But my goodness, my favorite character, hands down. She had a mix. She had a mix of the protection that we talked about earlier and the vulnerability. She had a mixture of both. She was able, she had enough protection, right, to be one of the baddest soldiers, right, and to be a trainer secondhand to Naniska. But she also had enough vulnerability to connect with the younger soldiers, and specifically Nawi, to be able to help her to reach her best level, right? So she had a mix. She had a great mix of vulnerability and protection. She talked about her mother trying to sell her virginity to other men and how she cried. She cried for her mother's help, but her mother didn't come. So she saved herself by burning these men with amber. She burned them to save herself. And we see this creativity. Throughout the movie, as well as we don't have weapons, right? We don't have the weapons that the other soldiers have. We don't have guns. We don't have horses. But I can grow my nails. And I can file them to points to be able to do damage in battle where they won't expect it, right? I can do this damage. I will use weapons that I have at my disposal, since I don't have anything to protect me, right? Thinking about little Izoji. I don't have anything to protect me, so I'll get this amber to burn these men. I'll use my nails to protect myself in battle. But we see this more vulnerable, defeated part of Izoji when she is captured. She's captured and her arm is broken. And Nawi is like, what's happening? I don't understand. Where are you? Which part? This isn't you, because there was a part of you that told me that we don't give up. We fight. We fight to the end. We cannot give up right now. And Izoji there was a part of her that said, no one's coming. Right? It's almost like that little girl came to her, like, nobody's going to come. No one's going to come to save me. And she succumbed. She succumbed to the inevitable. The inevitable that she would be sold off in slavery. The inevitable that she might be killed or even be taken advantage of, right? Because that often happened to women soldiers. So she was preparing herself, right? There's a part of us sometimes that will fight, right? Fight relentlessly. And then there's a part of us that that will prepare us, will give us the worst case scenario, will give us the worst case scenario to prepare us for the worst to happen, so that when it happens, it's not as painful, right? That's what our mind tells us, that if we tell ourselves that it's going to happen, then it won't catch us off guard. So it really seems like that's where Izoji was when Nawi met her, right? And as they were locked in that cage, like, hey, what's happening? We got to fight. And she, again, pushed through that pain, relocated her arm, which, oh my goodness, that was a lot to see and witness. And we saw this vulnerability. We saw this vulnerability with Nawi. And why did we see this vulnerability? Because that little girl inside of her who wanted someone to come and save her, oh, she did for Nawi what she wanted someone to do for her. She went back to save her. Even though, remember earlier in the movie, she was scolding Nawi for doing the same during the training ceremony, right? The final training ceremony. She said, don't go back, don't go back. She did for Nawi what she wanted someone to do for her. She saved her. It cost her her life. It was the ultimate sacrifice. I truly believe that Nawi felt seen by Izoji. She felt seen by her. She felt valued by her. Her sacrifice validated her. Not saying that that was required, right? Not saying that at all. But that act of sacrifice, that act of vulnerability, that spoke to the part of Nawi that felt discarded, that felt abandoned. I'm sure that spoke to that part of her. So that was beautiful to see. Speaking of Nawi, Nawi was adopted by a family, and her adopted father gave her away because she was unruly. She said, no man's going to have her. I've tried my best. I cannot deal with her. Nawi was abandoned by her birth mother, and she carried the burden. She carried the burden of being unwanted, abandoned, discarded, and being treated like a burden, right? Unruly, this child. I don't know what to do with her. Nobody saw her pain. They only saw her aggression. They only saw the unruliness. A behavior, something to deal with, a problem to deal with. No one got curious to say, I wonder why. I wonder why she's showing up this way. I wonder why. Is there hurt there? Is there hurt there? Because hurt shows up in some peculiar ways. We protect ourselves from hurt in some peculiar ways. And definitely aggression is one of them. Anger and rage is definitely one of the ways that we protect the most hurt and vulnerable parts of us. And so she fought. She used that unruly nature to make sure she was seen. And while, hey, the shadow side of that is that, that got under Anika's skin, so tough, right? And it caused them to have some heated moments, right, in training. And at the same time, it was something she desperately needed. It's something she desperately fought for because she didn't care the cost. She wanted to be seen. She needed to be seen. And oftentimes we don't really understand. We don't understand how much we need to be seen. As you hear this language about attention-seeking behavior, or they're just doing this for attention, and we need attention. We need it. No one likes to be ignored. No one likes to be ignored. No one wants to be abandoned or tossed away. No one wants that. We need to be seen. And Nawi was fighting for that. Nawi is hit. Nawi is hit with a truth bomb when she realizes that Nanika is her mother and how she was born. It's like this again. Okay, I already feel unwanted. I already feel tossed aside. People have been telling me that I'm unruly and that I'm a problem my whole life. And here, there's a part of her that says, yes, here's the evidence. You're a result of this traumatic, horrible thing. It activates, right, a part of her that has been carrying shame from that. And ironically, we talked about Nanika even shaming her for her unruliness, right? And so there's this part that is activated by this. And at the end of the movie, she's crying, right? She's crying. She's saying, I'm so sorry for what my father did to you. And it was beautiful. Beautiful for Naniska to see and to tell her that you are not the horrible thing that happened to me, and that it's not your fault. She was able to affirm her, and she was able to take her in, and coming back for her against the king's orders. Again, you see this twice. Nawi, people come back for her against their own training, against their own word. They come back for her to make sure that that little girl inside of her that had that question, am I worthy? Do I matter? That part gets validated. That part gets its answer, because she is worth it. And of course, we cannot talk about generational trauma without talking about Naniska. We don't know much. We don't know much about her backstory, meaning her childhood, her parents. We don't know how she became a soldier. We can assume that just like the other women, she was either discarded or she had to fight her way to become a soldier, right? And we learned that she was captured. She had to endure trauma while being captured and fought and came back, right? She rescued herself and fought and came back and fought her way to become a general. And during that process, she comes to realize that she was with child. She hid her pregnancy. She gave birth and gave her child away because she could not be viewed as weak or as vulnerable. She ignored so much of her own pain that she ignored other people's pain. She did. She ignored Nawi's pain when they met, right? Your father must be rich. You need to kill your tears. Even with the young girl at the very beginning of the movie who's crying because her parents are dead. She looks at them. She looks at her, but doesn't show her any compassion, because that protector that is numb to her pain is also numb to others. It's also numb to other people's pain. But who is getting her attention? The part of her that is carrying that pain of the traumatic things that she went through. It's coming to her in dreams. It's coming to her. She's having dreams, and that often happens where we have parts of us that are trying to get our attention, the exiles of us that are carrying pain because we have these protectors that are blocking our awareness of it, right? That they come to us when we those protectors are asleep. It'll come to us and say, hello, yeah, I'm still here. That girl, that traumatic thing, those awful things happened to, I'm still here. And she said in the movie when she was going back to free and get Nawi, that I have to see her. I've been ignoring her for so long. I thought she was the worst of me. And I need to see her. I finally need to see her and acknowledge who she is, and that she's a part of me. I need to be present for her. We also see different parts of Naniska showing up when her trauma has been dormant, it's been repressed, it's in the background because she's numbed it all, right? She's got that part that was numbing everything to protect her. She also has this anxious part too, right? She has this anxious part that showed up when she sees that general who violated her. She freezes. She freezes. It's that fight or flight moment, and she freezes and is caught off guard. And also, we see this anxious part. They are doing this compromise where she has to trade. She has to trade some of her soldiers that she's been training to this general. And she knows what's going to happen to them. The same thing that happened to her. And she has a panic attack. She chooses Nawi and then goes back into her office or her shed, her hut area, and she has a panic attack. because she does not want her biggest fear. I truly believe that her biggest fear was either that happening to her again or someone underneath her ranks, right? That happening to them again. So she became what she needed. She became a soldier, a general, a protector of all the women to make sure that this doesn't happen. You're not going to get captured, right? You're not. We will die in battle. We may die in battle, but we will not be captured and be vulnerable to these men. We will not allow that to happen. She became what she needed. And the ultimate sacrifice was when she put herself in harm's way. One, to fight for her daughter, but also to fight for that little girl inside of her. The one that's been carrying that pain, that's been trying to get her attention. She fought for her too and told that general, you may not remember me, but I'm going to make sure that you never forget. That you never forget me. It spoke to that dehumanization we talked about before, right? Who knows how many women were violated by this general? Who knows, right? And it's not even apparent that he remembered her, right? She remembered him very, very clearly. But it's not clear. It's not depicted. It's not told that he remembered her. But Naniska made sure that he wouldn't forget. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about the Woman King, what you saw in the movie, what spoke out to you. If you feel like some of these themes were played out, something you saw with the vulnerability and the protection and the survival and with the generational trauma and Black women and how they had to fight to be seen and to be acknowledged, how their worth was minimized, but they found ways through protection. Whether it was adorning themselves with beauty or whether it was taking on this hard armor to fight, not out of choice, but to fight out of desperation, to fight because they have to. If you have held on for this long, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I also have a podcast called At the End of the Day Podcast. If you are interested in that, we talk about real life stuff. We do talk about mental health. We talk about trauma. So lean into your curiosity. I'm on pretty much all streaming services, so check that out. And also the link is in the description. And as always, be cool, be calm, be centered.